Hello and welcome to Nmap NSE, the 12th video as part of our Red Team Fundamentals mini-series. In the previous video, we discussed Nmap and its capabilities. We discussed the anatomy of port scanning, how to conduct such port scanning, and the various different options that we can implement to gather detailed port information. Now, one of the issues that you may have observed in that previous video was the fact that although we managed to find out the information on the numerous ports, the information on them was quite scarce. Now, what I mean by this is that the information provided by those ports was minimal, and although identified, we knew little of the type of service that may have been hosting. Now, Nmap's scripting engine, or otherwise known as NSE, takes conventional scanning a step further. It allows us to implement custom scanning capabilities through the use of scripts. And by utilizing these scripts, we can perform service version checks, vulnerability assessments of the identified services, and even perform automated exploitation. In this video, we will discuss all about it. Now, as per usual, everything we teach in this video is purely for educational purposes. We take no responsibility for your actions. My name is Jonas Montanes, and if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like as it helps us grow. Additionally, we have a Discord server where you can join and access the several courses we have available, all at no cost. Those courses provide you a glimpse of what to expect for when we release the complete Red Team Operator course, which will cover everything you need to know about red teaming operations using a C2 and more. Now, although writing scripts of your own falls beyond the scope of this video, Nmap offers numerous built-in scripts that we can readily utilize. These scripts are categorized into 13 different categories, each performing a specific type of assessment corresponding to its category. Some scripts may belong only to a single category, whilst others may belong to several, and we'll take a look at that later on. Also, do note that I have only outlined the 6 most commonly utilized categories. However, I will leave it as an exercise for you to explore the remaining 7. Now, by far, the most common category is default, and any script that Nmap balances between safety, speed, intrusiveness, and several other factors all fall under this category. In our previous video, we saw how we could implement script scanning through the use of the A switch. However, as we will shortly see, there is a better alternative to this through the SC switch, and it allows us to avoid any unnecessary scanning options. Another common category is external, and scripts that fall under this category are all those scripts that perform external reconnaissance gathering, such as querying whois databases. This is useful when we might want to implement automated, publicly available information gathering on our targets. Another one is discovery, which enumerates the exposed services for information, such as window shares, titles of HTTP websites. Version is a good one too, which specifically attempts to identify the version information of exposed services. This is exactly the same as the version detection switch we discussed in the previous video. And last but not least, we have vuln and exploit. And the vuln category attempts to identify known vulnerabilities, and the exploit category attempts to actively exploit the identified vulnerabilities. Now, although these categories are really useful for when we might have a specific set of checks that we want to perform, we can also leverage scripts individually. To better understand how this is done, let's take a look at the practical implementation of Nmap's NSE. Now, in order to actually use a script or leverage it for the purposes of our scanning, we utilize the script switch. And simply put, the switch script accepts either a file name of the specified script. Now, we can also specify scripts by their category. So for instance, discovery would implement all of those scripts that fall under the category of discovery. And we can also specify a directory containing a set of scripts. And essentially all of the scripts that fall under the specified directory or within the directory would be incorporated. Now, Nmap actually uses its own set of scripts, and you can find it within the user share Nmap scripts directory. So if we take a look at the contents here, you'll see here that there are numerous different switches for which Nmap supports. And all of these switches will be categorized within their specific category. Now, we can actually list the total number of scripts using WC with the L switch. And as you can see here, Nmap supports a wealthy 610 total scripts that it can utilize. So it's quite a lot. Now, we can additionally specify a Boolean expression. And if we actually take a look at some of the content here, or some of the use cases here, you'll see some examples of how these Boolean values are incorporated. So as you can see here, the Boolean value in this case is specified as an AND. And we won't get into much of this in detail. However, we can specifically tell Nmap which categories to use at once by chaining Boolean operators. Now, in our previous video, we identified a IIS web server running on port 80. Now, although we identified the web server and the specific version, we had little to no context of how that web server operates. Now, one of the useful scripts for which we can implement whenever we identify a given web server is the HTTP method script. Now, if you don't know, certain methods of HTTP allow us to perform various different checks on the given web server. For instance, one of those methods could allow us to see what is being received by the target web server and how it is being received. And other methods could actually allow us to upload files to the given web server. And therefore, you can probably see why such enumeration would be useful. Now, in order to implement this, we can utilize the HTTP method script, but before we do so, we can actually print its help option. To do so, we can use the nmap command and then the script help switch. And the script help switch will essentially print the help dialog or help menu for that given script. So in our case, HTTP methods here. So if we click enter here, you'll see the help dialog that Nmap presents. Now, kind of going down here from top to bottom, one of the important fields here is categories. And essentially what this specifies is the categories under which this script falls under. So as you can see here, the category for safe is specified. And this is good because safe scripts allow us to perform safe enumeration of a given port without attempting to, say, exploit it or perform various different brute force operations. So essentially any script in this category is not really damaging. Additionally, we have the default category, and recall that the default category specifies a default set of scripts for which Nmap implements. Now, another useful option here is the actual documentation for that script. So if we actually take a look at this, we'll open it with Firefox here. You'll see that we are directed to the script's documentation. So here you can see obviously the script summary finds out what options are supported by a HTTP server by sending an options request. So essentially it outlines how the script works. Going down here a little further, you can see the script arguments. So these are the arguments that the script accepts. We'll later take a look at how to implement the test all argument. And also you can see the example usage of how to leverage this script and the type of output that can be expected. So let's actually leverage the script. We'll use the nmap command. We'll specify port 80 manually. We'll also specify the SV switch for version detection. And then comes the script switch with the HTTP methods value. And then last but not least, the target host that we are scanning. So if we click enter here, the scan will initiate. And then once complete here, we will see the output of the specified script within its results. Now, as you can see here, some of the output that Nmap presented to us is the supported methods by the target web server. Now, some of these methods are indeed legitimate and are used for legitimate purposes. For instance, the get method and the post method. And then additionally, Nmap outlines a potentially risky method named trace. Now, to put it the simplest way possible, the trace method allows us to inspect how our requests are being sent and handled by the web server. And typically it can be used for data testing or some sort of debugging operations. However, there are certain implementations of this method that can enable attacks. For instance, if we take a look at OWASP here, you'll see that the trace method here can be used to implement what is known as cross-site tracing. And essentially cross-site tracing involves utilizing cross-site scripting and the trace or track HTTP methods in order to actually steal users' cookies. Now, although obviously we won't get into how to conduct such attacks, these are the reasons for why implementing scripts like this for target web servers is useful. Now, earlier we said that we can implement script arguments, and the way that we do so is through the script args switch. And when we utilize script arguments, we need to provide the specific value, or the specific argument, and its value that we are using. So if we take a look at the script arguments of the HTTP methods script again, you'll find the test all argument. And essentially all that this argument does, if it is set to true, essentially it tries all of the unsafe methods as well. Now, if we take a closer look at the documentation on the specific methods that HTTP supports, we'll see the standard methods that are utilized today. And typically these methods are safe, such as head, get, post, but then also there are methods that could be abused for nefarious purposes. For instance, we have 4 different set of methods here. We've got put, we've got delete, connect, and trace. And put, for instance, could be used to upload files to the target web server. Delete could potentially be used to delete files of a web server, and the list goes on. So I'd suggest that you have a little bit more of a read into what HTTP methods are when utilizing the HTTP method script. So we need to specify the specific argument, which is going to be test all. And the way that we specify the value for it is simply using the equal sign and then the value it expects. Now, by default, test all will be false, so it will have a value of false. Now, if we specify a value of true, in addition to the safe methods, all of the unsafe methods will also be evaluated. So let's run this updated scan and see the results that we get. Now, if you take a look here in the output, in addition, where previously we identified the trace method, in addition to that method, we also have the put method. Now, of course, we're not going to explain you or show you how to exploit the method, but by utilizing the test all argument with the value of true, allowed us to enumerate even more potentially risky methods. Now, as I said earlier, you can actually specify additional arguments by using a comma. And then if we take a look at the script arguments again, we will see additional arguments that we can implement. So for instance, the retest arguments, if defined, the script will do a request using each method individually and show the response code. Now, by default, it is disabled, but we will specify a value of true and rerun the script again. So as you can see here, we get a little bit more context over the HTTP methods and whether those methods are potentially exploitable. So the get method was fine, the head method was fine also, but put, for instance, requires the specification of a length value. And this is typically specified through the content length header, but we won't get too much into that. So as you can see, by chaining various different arguments, we can get even more information about these scans that we are conducting. And in this case, these results could potentially even be used for subsequent attacks. For instance, maybe we could try to upload files to a given web server and exploit some functionality to execute them. And when we do so, typically that would be executed in the context of the target web server, allowing us to potentially even gain remote code execution on the target. But again, we are getting too ahead of ourselves now. Now, it can be rather tedious to manually specify and run scripts each time, especially when you are examining numerous ports. In such cases, we can utilize the SC switch. And what this switch specifies is that instead of manually specifying a set of scripts, Nmap will use its own default set of scripts instead. Now, taking a look at the default set of scripts that Nmap supports, we can find an abundant amount of them. For instance, taking a look at one of these scripts right here, Nmap attempts to retrieve a list of usernames using the finger service. It also checks if a given FTP server allows for anonymous logins and numerous different other options. So typically when you are running a default set of scripts, when you are performing a comprehensive port scan, for instance, the scanning of all ports, this can provide a wealthy amount of information. So I'll leave it as an exercise for you to explore the SC switch per every single port that can be implemented with Nmap, but in our case, we will stick with port 80. So taking a look at the scan results now, in addition to the HTTP method script, Nmap also implemented HTTP title, which allowed us to obtain the title of the given web server. Additionally, Nmap implemented HTTP server header, which allowed us to obtain the header information for the given web server. And then also we have HTTP methods, which we explored earlier. So as you can see, the SC switch allows us to perform even more comprehensive enumeration. Now, one of the last options that I will showcase you here is how to use all scripts that Nmap supports. Now, of course, you don't want to be using all of these scripts for all of the identified services, because that will just cause absolute chaos. Because one, Nmap will attempt to exploit the found services. It will also attempt to brute force them. It will also attempt to perform various different denial of service attacks against them. So overall, it is just not recommended to use. But in case you do want to use it for God knows whatever reason, you can use the Nmap command with the script switch and a value of all. So we'll actually specify service version here as well. Port 80 will also specify verbosity to its max, and then also the target web server corp.a.cloud. So let's run the scan, and as you can see here, immediately we get a numerous amount of information that relates to these scanning options that are being implemented. So most of these are currently related to performing some sort of external enumeration. So as you can see here, numerous different API keys are missing. Additionally, some of the scripts are only supported by IPv6. And as the scan goes on, as you can see here, the information that it provides to us is abundant. Now, of course, some of this information might be useless, but as I said, this option is possible in case you want to perform the scanning of all scripts. But again, keep in mind that the network traffic that this generates is just too much. So even 5 minutes after, the scan is still running, and I don't see it finishing anytime soon. And that covers it for Nmap scripting engine. So our previous 2 videos discussed Nmap in detail, and hopefully by now you should have a strong understanding of it. Now, as we continue into our final video on active reconnaissance, we will be taking a look at Nessus. And Nessus is a automated vulnerability scanner, which can allow us to scan for vulnerabilities of a given target. Now, Nmap's capabilities in performing automated vulnerability gathering is quite weak, and also it is quite outdated. Now, I will leave it as an exercise for you to implement automated vulnerability scanning with Nmap. And remember, you can do this through the use of specifying a specific set of categories when implementing scripts. That being said, it's been your host, Nmap Tennis, and I will see you in the next one.